This is a special Sound Off Extra movie review for the Cloverfield Paradox. There are spoilers in this video, so if you have not seen the new film yet, you have been warned. And that goes for the first two Cloverfield films as well. There may be spoilers in here for those two, so just be forewarned. Some background first. If you're a longtime fan of my podcast, you know that I am a huge fan of the original Cloverfield movie. I could not stop following all of the ARG stuff at the time online, all the viral marketing. I was instantly hooked from the moment that teaser trailer first appeared. I mean, it's a giant monster that rampages through New York City. What's not to like? The problem is, the movie answered almost none of those questions from the viral marketing. The origin of the monster, the Tagroato Corporation, and you could understand that because it was a found footage movie. So realistically, you're not going to be able to have all those things explained to you. You're going to have some questions that just don't get answered. That's what sequels and prequels are for. So when 10 Cloverfield Lane came out a couple of years back, 8 years after the original, I was really excited until I saw it and I realized that it really didn't seem to connect to the first movie at all. On its own, it's an excellent movie. I really liked it, at least until the last few minutes. I was not much a fan of that. It just felt completely tacked on. As a Cloverfield film, though, it was very disappointing. It felt like a movie that had already been made that tried to retrofit elements of the Cloverfield film into it after the fact, which is exactly what happened. In fact, the original title of that movie didn't even have the word Cloverfield in it. It was called something completely different. Which brings me to the Cloverfield Paradox. Originally, this movie was called God Particle, or The God Particle. Same situation, where you have a movie that really has nothing to do with Cloverfield when it's first conceived and first created, has its release date pushed back 3 different times. Paramount ends up selling it to Netflix, and there's rumors they might air the first trailer for it during the Superbowl. So imagine my surprise when not only do we get the trailer, but they drop the whole damn movie the same night. And it's actually pretty smart, I gotta give them credit. It's very smart on their part. There's no time for any negative reviews, no time for spoilers to leak out, which they've been very sensitive to when it comes to these movies. People can't get their hopes up too much if they don't see it coming. Just, here's another Cloverfield movie, and guess what? You can watch it right now. The trailer had clips in it from the original movie, which the previous film did not. And it flat out said in the trailer, find out why the monster found us all those years ago. So, did it deliver on that? Yes. They actually did reveal a new plot line to explain how the monster ended up on Earth. And I'll say this much. The fact that we even got the 5 seconds that we did of the monster at the end of this movie made me very happy. It was good to see the monster again. It's been too long. I still felt disappointed, though. I am not a fan of this trend with these last 2 movies of taking a film that has absolutely nothing to do with Cloverfield when it's made and shoehorning in elements of the original. It feels like a cheap way to just drum up interest in a bunch of standalone films that they know those films aren't going to do very well on their own. If you're not part of a franchise, if it's not a sequel, it seems like nobody seems to give a damn. So they probably know these movies aren't going to do that well. They probably cost a whole bunch of money to make. So what do? You tack on the Cloverfield name, and voila. All of a sudden, there's a lot more interest in it. So I can't even really fault them for it. I know why they do it, but that doesn't make it any better. On its own, I think the movie was decent. Definitely my least favorite of the 3 so far. 10 Cloverfield Lane was a much better movie. This one had elements. The thing that struck me about this one is it had elements of Alien and The Thing and Doom. Remember Doom? The whole space station thing in this movie reminded me of Doom with The Rock, which I know is not exactly a critically acclaimed film, but I enjoyed it for what it was. If you like space thrillers, I think you'll enjoy this. It's an easy watch. It's about an hour and 40 minutes. So the premise is this. It's the year 2028, and the world's energy resources are all nearly depleted, practically gone. World is on the brink of war. Their only hope is the crew on the Cloverfield space station and its particle accelerator that they call the Shepherd. Now, if it works, it can provide unlimited energy for the rest of time. If it doesn't, life as we know it is over. That's it. We see the crew watching a news interview on TV with this scientist called Mark Stambler, which just so happens to be the last name of John Goodman's character in 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I remember from all the ARG stuff. I mean, I doubt that's a coincidence, but who the hell knows if it'll ever tie in at some point. He's on there. He's selling his new book called The Cloverfield Paradox. What else? And he's warning anybody who will listen that there may be dire consequences for firing this particle accelerator if it works, that this thing is so powerful it could rip a hole in space and time and create all alternate dimensions that are just blended together, and it could alter not only the present, but it has the ability to alter the past and the future. And he even warns that aliens and sea monsters may appear as a result, so just this whole dystopian view and just a real negative Nancy this guy is, okay? So it takes 2 years up in space. They finally get the particle accelerator to fire, and that's when things go haywire. It knocks the station off course to the point that they can't even see Earth through the window anymore. They just don't see anything. It knocks out all communications, and very weird things begin to happen. Things that can only be explained by Stambler's theory that the crew now finds itself in another dimension. Elements of different dimensions have seemingly been fused together. See? So Egon was right when he told the Ghostbusters not to cross the streams. He knew what he was talking about. The main character in the movie is named Ava. She's one of the astronauts on board. She has a husband back on Earth named Michael, who we see periodically when they cut back to scenes from Earth. And because of what happened with the particle accelerator, it looks like monsters have invaded Earth. Although we really get the only clear view of the monster at the very end of the movie. But there is a scene kind of in the middle of the movie when Michael, he gets out of a car, he's looking around at some of the chaos and the carnage that's going on, and you see like a shadow or a silhouette of what appears to be a monster. You don't actually see the monster itself. So technically, I guess you could say there are 2 different times in the movie where you see a monster, but let's be honest, you really only see it one time, and it's for 5 seconds. So monsters have seemingly invaded the Earth. Ava and the other crew member that's still left alive by the end of the movie, they end up leaving the space. I know I'm skipping ahead by a lot, but I don't want to give away too much here. But Ava and the last remaining crew member of hers, they escape the station in an escape pod. They're headed back down to Earth when Michael gets a phone call from a friend of his at NASA giving him the good news. Hey, your wife is on her way back. She's due to land somewhere along the Delaware coast. And Michael is absolutely mortified by this. She has no idea that these monsters are back on Earth, and he's screaming at the guy on the phone, tell them not to come back. Unfortunately, it's too late. They're already in orbit. They're on their way. And as their pod falls through the clouds, up from the clouds comes this giant version of the Cloverfield monster from the original movie. Now, I did immediately think, when I saw that pod falling, I did immediately think of the object that fell from the sky at the end of the first movie. I don't know that would make any sense here, if it was their pod, or maybe it wasn't a pod, maybe it was the satellite or something in that first movie, but that was the first thing I thought of when I saw that thing falling, back down to Earth. So that's the basic premise as far as how it begins. Weird things happen, and that's how the film climaxes in the end. What I get from this, and the best theory that I've seen others suggest, because I really haven't had too much time. I watched it last night when the game ended. I had to work all day, and I'm browsing Twitter and some people I follow, so I got a sense of what other people kind of thought of it. And this is the theory that I happen to subscribe to, is that the Cloverfield monster, or monsters, I guess, are actually from another dimension. That seems to be the theory that makes the most sense. And all of these things, from the monster to the aliens that we see at the end of 10 Cloverfield Lane, if you want to try to tie that movie into this, I don't know if this happens across 3 different dimensions in each of the 3 movies or not, but all of these events were caused by that particle accelerator. The moment they fired that thing, it caused a rip in space and time, just like they were warned. And it caused all of these awful things to happen, including the monster that attacked New York back in 2008. Because remember, we were told by the crazy scientist on TV that this could affect the past and the future, as well as the present. So, I actually, now me personally, I think the monster at the end of the movie is the same one from the original. Or I guess it could be. It could be the same monster from the original. The first movie happened in 2008. Supposedly the monster was just a baby at the time. I don't know if that's something J.J. Abrams may have said in an interview or if that's just fan speak, but I was always of the impression that the monster is supposed to be a baby in the first film. Well, if that was '08, and this is, I believe, taking place in 2028, it's 20 years later. This thing now is fully grown. Big as it was in the original, if it was a baby, it's even bigger now, right? That's what seemed to make sense to me. So that's my thought on this whole thing. What I hate about that explanation, though, is that when you start getting into other dimensions as a way to explain things, you effectively free yourself from having to explain anything. Literally nothing else matters. The words, "this doesn't make any sense," don't apply anymore when you start getting into all this other stuff, because everything makes sense so long as you just explain that it's, well, from an alternate dimension. If there's a scene where I'm having breakfast with a family of porcupines, all of whom are reading the Wall Street Journal, that might seem weird to you, right? But it's not weird at all. It's just another dimension. And in that dimension, that's perfectly normal behavior. That actually sounds like a dimension I wouldn't mind living in. So that's the one thing. I almost look at it as, I don't know if lazy is the right word for it or a cop-out. And I look at, and when it comes to science fiction movies, you have things like that. You're dealing with space and time and Back to the Future. Those guys went back in time. So you have movies where, that's part of the story. But I think trying to use that as a device to explain the origins of the monsters and all these different things, it does come across to me as though they're just looking for an easy way to explain all of these unexplainable events away. It's been 10 years since the original movie came out. Just had the 10-year anniversary a few weeks ago. I know part of it is just my own personal frustration because we never got a nice and neat explanation of exactly what happened in the original. They're going to do a bunch of movies that try to thread things together, however loosely that may be. And that's fine, and I'll play along because, look, I'm a fan. So, I may not like the way they do this and that, but they got me hooked from day one. So unless they put out a movie that's just completely absolute garbage and I just throw my hands up in the air and give up. I mean, look, I feel like I'm one of the few left still watching the original Walking Dead. A lot of my friends don't even, they quit around season 4 or 6. And I'm one of the few that I know left still watching that. So it would take a lot, I think, for me to just have me give up completely on this. So if that's what they want to do, if they want to loosely thread these things together across a bunch of different movies, fine. But, I was always partial to the idea that, it was a deep sea drilling accident that sort of awakened the monster in that first movie, and Taguato being to Cloverfield what the Umbrella Corporation sort of is to Resident Evil. And that's going back to the ARG stuff, I know, but I wish they would have just taken that and put that in movie form. Because sometimes I just feel like, less is more, and the simpler story told can sometimes be even more compelling. Now, that being said, Michael Myers was a lot scarier when you didn't know what made him go around killing people on Halloween, so I guess there's something to be said for keeping certain things a mystery. Now, there is a fourth Cloverfield movie rumored to be coming out later this year. Right now, it's called Overlord, although that may change. It's due out October 26th is the current release date. It is a Nazi zombie movie set during World War II. And I mentioned that the Taguato Corporation, what's interesting about that is that Taguato in Clover lore was founded in 1945, right at the end of World War II. So you would think, if we're going to get a Cloverfield film that's based during World War II, there has to be some kind of tie-in there, you would think. And even if there isn't, a movie about killing Nazi zombies sounds pretty cool to me. But I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what you thought about the movie if you saw it down below in the comments section. I could be completely off the mark, by the way, with my theory and what I think this means and how it ties into all the other movies. So if you have your own theory, again, sound off down below in the comments section. And if you are not a Cloverfield fan, thank you for indulging me here. I know normally it's wrestling content here on this channel, but a lot of you know that I'm a big fan of the series. And some of you saw the movie and wanted to know my thoughts, so I figured, why not take 15 minutes and just talk shop here for a little bit? So we'll be back with a brand new extra real soon. I'm sure wrestling related here on the channel. So hit the sub button if you haven't already done so. Until then, be well, stay safe, and I will see you guys back here again real soon. Take care, guys.